The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. Aliens of all shapes and sizes sat in high-backed seats, their eyes glowing under the dim blue lights. They ruled countless worlds, commanded massive fleets, and made decisions that shaped the fate of entire civilizations. But today, they gathered for something different. Today, they had a guest, a human woman named Leora Kane. She stood in the center of the chamber, her expression calm despite the cold stares around her. As Earth's ambassador, she had come to negotiate peace between humanity and the Council. But the moment she arrived, she realized something was wrong. The way the guards smirked, the way the leaders whispered to each other, it was clear. This was no meeting. This was a trap. A tall, reptilian alien stepped forward. His golden robes shimmered under the lights, and his deep voice echoed through the hall. He was Lord Varric, ruler of the Zyre Dominion. He looked down at Leora like she was an insect. Humans, he sneered, always so bold, always thinking they deserve a seat at our table. Leora met his gaze without fear. We came in peace, Lord Varric. We only wish for cooperation. The room erupted in laughter. Cold, cruel laughter, the kind that made the air feel heavy. A feline-like alien with silver fur, Lady Shira, flicked her tail and smiled. Cooperation. You misunderstand, human. You are not here to make a deal. You are here because we allowed it. Leora's fists clenched. She had heard stories about the Galactic Council, the corruption, the arrogance, but she had still hoped for diplomacy. Now, she saw the truth. They never planned to negotiate. They only wanted to humiliate her. A sharp pain struck her side. She gasped, stumbling as electricity surged through her body. One of the guards had struck her with a stun rod. Another followed, hitting her across the back. She fell to her knees, breathing hard. More laughter filled the room. Varric stepped closer, his sharp claws glinting. This is what happens to those who do not know their place. Leora gritted her teeth. She had faced threats before. She had stood in war zones, negotiated with warlords. But this was different. They were not just attacking her. They were making a statement, a message to all humans. The blows came again, harder this time. She bit down a scream. The pain burned, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Blood dripped onto the floor, mixing with the cold metal beneath her. Then something happened. Something she hadn't expected. One of the alien guards whispered something, just a name. A simple name. But the moment it was spoken, the laughter stopped. The room grew silent. The leaders, who had been enjoying her suffering, suddenly stiffened. Eyes darted around. Expressions changed from amusement to unease. Even Lord Varric took a step back. Leora noticed the shift immediately. Through the pain, she lifted her head and saw the fear creeping into their eyes. She forced a weak smile. "What's wrong?" she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "You look afraid." Varric's face twisted, as if he was trying to hide his fear. He turned to the guard who had spoken and growled, "Don't say that name." But it was too late. The word had already spread. The whispers had begun. Every leader in the room knew the name. Every leader in the room understood what it meant. Darius Kane, Leora's husband, the most feared human warrior in the galaxy. Some called him a monster. Others called him a legend. But all of them knew one thing. He was not the kind of man to forgive. And now, they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. One of the younger council members, a nervous-looking amphibian, turned to Varric. "You didn't tell us who she was." Varric's claws twitched. "It doesn't matter," he snapped. "He is just one man." Lady Shira shook her head, her silver fur bristling. "One man? You fool. He is not just a man. He is a storm." Panic spread through the chamber. The leaders whispered among themselves. Some suggested killing Leora immediately to cover their mistake. Others argued that it was too late. Darius would already know. He always knew. Lyra saw their fear growing, and despite the pain, she let out a soft, painful chuckle. You thought you could hurt me, without consequences. Varric turned back to her, his confidence shaken but not gone. You think your husband can do anything against us? We rule this galaxy. We control the fleets. He is nothing against our power. Lyra wiped the blood from her lip and smiled. Then why are your hands shaking? Varric looked down. His fingers were trembling. He clenched them into fists, furious that his body betrayed him. Another council member, an insectoid with sharp mandibles, buzzed nervously. We should leave. Now. Disappear before he comes looking for us. Varric slammed his fist against the table. Enough. We are the rulers of this galaxy. We do not run from a single human. The doors burst open. A guard rushed in, out of breath, his eyes wide with terror. We have a problem, he stammered. Varric turned sharply. What is it? The guard hesitated. Then, with a shaky voice, he spoke the words that sent chills through the room. Darius Kane just disappeared from the war maps. No one knows where he is. Silence. A deep, suffocating silence. The rulers of the galaxy, the so-called masters of the stars, felt something they had never felt before. A cold, creeping dread. Because when Darius Kane disappeared, it only meant one thing. He was coming. The Galactic Council chamber was no longer filled with laughter. The rulers who had mocked Lyra Kane just moments ago now sat frozen in their seats. Fear hung in the air like a thick cloud. Darius Kane's name had shattered their arrogance in an instant. Lord Varric clenched his fists, trying to keep control. Enough of this nonsense, he growled. One man cannot threaten the council. We have armies, warships, and the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. No one responded. The fear in their eyes told a different story. Lady Shira's silver tail twitched as she leaned forward. You don't understand, Varric, she whispered. Darius Kane is not a man we can fight with armies. Varric scoffed. What do you suggest, then? We beg for mercy. Before she could answer, another guard rushed into the chamber. His breathing was heavy, his uniform stained with sweat. He looked as if he had seen death itself. My lords, he gasped, we just received an emergency transmission. It's from the outer colonies. Varric's eyes narrowed. Which colony? The guard swallowed hard. Oris Prime. A ripple of unease passed through the council. Oris Prime was a heavily fortified world, home to one of the council's military outposts. It was supposed to be untouchable. Varric's voice was sharp. Put it on the main screen. The lights dimmed, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. A grainy, flickering image filled the screen. The transmission was weak, distorted by static, but the panic in the speaker's voice was clear. This is Commander Luro of Oris Prime. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The video shook violently as explosions roared in the background. Smoke filled the air. Alarms blared. Soldiers ran through the corridors, shouting orders, their faces twisted in fear. Varric's expression darkened. Who is attacking? Is it the humans? The commander on the screen turned, his face pale with horror. No, it's not an army. It's just one man. The room fell into stunned silence. Then, the screen went black. The transmission had been cut off. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound in the chamber was the faint hum of the overhead lights. Lady Shira exhaled slowly. It has begun. Varric slammed his fist against the table. This is impossible. No single human can take down an entire military outpost. But deep down, even he didn't believe his own words. Lyra, still kneeling on the floor, lifted her bruised face. Blood ran down her temple, but her smile was victorious. You should have killed me when you had the chance, she said softly. Varric's claws twitched. He wanted to strike her again, to wipe that smug expression off her face. But something stopped him. Fear. Darius Kane was coming, and there was nothing they could do to stop him. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was heavy. Fear twisted in their chests like a living thing. The last message from Horus Prime still echoed in their minds. It's just one man. Lord Varric's breathing was uneven. He had seen wars, led fleets, crushed rebellions. But this was different. The idea of one man bringing destruction to an entire military outpost was beyond reason. Lady Shira turned to the trembling guard. Send scouts. I want confirmation. If Horus Prime has fallen, we need to know how. The guard hesitated. My lady, who would volunteer for such a mission? No one wanted to be the next to face Darius Kane. A deep, guttural voice interrupted. I will go. Heads turned as a massive figure stepped forward. General Torvash, the commander of the Council's elite forces, stood with his arms crossed. His scaled skin gleamed under the lights. A warrior feared across the stars. He had crushed human rebellions before. Humans are strong. Yes, Torvash rumbled, but not invincible. This Kane is no different. He bleeds like the rest of them. Varric grinned, his fear fading. Yes, take your best soldiers. Hunt him down. End this before it begins. Torvash nodded and turned to leave. But then, the doors slammed open. Another guard stumbled in, gasping for air. His uniform was torn, his face drenched in sweat. My lords, he cried. It's worse than we thought. Varric narrowed his eyes. Speak. The guard swallowed hard. We just lost contact with 2 more outposts. Same message, same attacker. The room went still. Torvash's jaw clenched. Where? The guard wiped his forehead. Vos Theta. And Celtris 9. A cold wave of dread swept through the chamber. These were fortified worlds, not simple colonies. Losing one was a disaster. Losing 3 in a single night. Unthinkable. Varric slammed his fist on the table. This is impossible. Even a fleet would struggle to take out these defenses. Lady Shira's voice was quiet, but firm. Darius Kane is not a fleet. He is something worse. Varric sneered. Superstitious nonsense. What is he? Some kind of demon. The guard shivered. My lord, the survivors. He hesitated. Varric's patience snapped. Speak, damn you. The guard's voice was barely a whisper. They said he walked through fire, that bullets melted before reaching him, that he ripped war machines apart with his bare hands. Torvash snorted. Lies. Fear makes people see ghosts. The guard shook his head. They all say the same thing. And there is one more thing. He looked at Leora. They say he's looking for her. Leora smiled. Blood still dripped from her temple, but her eyes burned with defiance. Then you'd better pray he doesn't find me here. Torvash turned to Varric. I will go myself. I will find this Kane and end him. Varric nodded, his confidence returning. Yes, kill him, and this nightmare ends. But deep inside, he was lying to himself. Because he knew the truth. This wasn't the beginning of a nightmare. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Darius Kane was coming, and there was no stopping him. The warship Bloodfang cut through the darkness of space, heading toward the ruins of Horus Prime. General Torvash stood on the command deck, his sharp eyes locked onto the shattered planet below. Smoke and fire still burned across the surface. What should have been an impenetrable fortress was now nothing more than wreckage and silence. Torvash growled, Bring us closer. I want to see what happened with my own eyes. His second-in-command, Captain Roll, hesitated. Sir, the energy readings. They are unnatural. Torvash narrowed his eyes. Explain. Rull gulped. Our scanners show no signs of life, but there are disturbances, weapons fire, explosions, but there is no enemy fleet in the system, no soldiers, no invaders. Torvash's grip tightened around the metal railing. Then who the hell is doing this? The answer came seconds later. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A transmission, one they never expected, echoed through the command deck. A voice. Deep, cold, human. "I was hoping you'd come." The bridge crew froze. Torvash's scales stiffened. His blood turned to ice. Darius Kane. Ral's hands shook as he turned to the general. How is he broadcasting to us? We didn't open communication. Darius laughed. A slow, dark chuckle. I don't need permission. Torvash stepped forward. Kane, you think you can scare me? Silence. Then, a low beep. A flashing red warning appeared on every screen. Warning. External control VTSTTD. Torvash's heart pounded. What is this? Darius spoke again, his voice like a blade. You boarded this ship thinking you were hunters, but you never realized. The screens flickered. The ship's internal systems shut down. Weapons, engines, shields. Darius whispered, You're the prey. The Bloodfang shook violently. Alarm sirens screamed. The crew shouted in panic. Then, a bright explosion erupted from the lower decks. Fire spread through the corridors. Metal twisted. The warship, once a symbol of power, was now dying. Torvash bared his teeth. You coward. Face me. Darius' voice remained calm. You think I came here to fight fair? The ship lurched. The artificial gravity failed. Crew members screamed as they were pulled into the air, crashing into walls, spinning helplessly. Then the bridge doors exploded. A figure stepped through the smoke. Tall, human. His eyes burned like fire. His armor was black, his fists clenched. Darius Kane had arrived. Torvash roared and charged. His massive claws slashed toward the human's throat. Darius didn't move. At the last second, he caught Torvash's wrist in one hand. The alien general's eyes widened in shock. His strength, his brute force, meant nothing. Darius squeezed. Bones snapped. Torvash screamed. Darius pulled him closer, his voice a whisper. You hurt my wife. With a sudden, brutal motion, Darius lifted Torvash off the ground and slammed him into the metal floor. The impact cracked the deck. Blood spilled from the alien's mouth. The bridge crew watched in horror. Their strongest warrior, the greatest general of their species, was being broken like an insect. Darius knelt beside Torvash's trembling body. Tell your leaders. His voice was calm, but his eyes were filled with something far worse than rage. I'm coming for them next. Torvash coughed, his vision fading. His last thought before darkness took him was simple. We never stood a chance. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The leaders sat frozen, their faces pale as they watched the live feed from the Bloodfang. The warship, once one of their most powerful vessels, was now drifting, its hull torn open, its crew either dead or missing. But the worst part wasn't the destruction. It was the message. A single transmission, played over and over again, on every council screen, in every military outpost, in every news station across the Empire. Darius Kane's voice. I'm coming for you. Lord Varric's hands trembled. This is impossible. Lady Shira's eyes darted to Leora, who sat calmly at the table, her injuries from the attack still fresh, but her expression unreadable. He's doing this for you, she said, almost accusingly. Leora smirked. No, he's doing this because you made him do it. Varric slammed his fist against the table. Enough. We must act now. He turned to his generals. Deploy every fleet, every soldier. We must stop him before he reaches the capital. Admiral Vos cleared his throat. My lord, we don't even know where he is. Varric glared at him. He just destroyed the Bloodfang. Trace his energy signature. The admiral swallowed hard. We did. He hesitated. And the admiral took a deep breath. By the time we pinpointed his location, he was already gone. The room fell into a heavy silence. Lady Shira spoke, her voice cold. Then it's worse than we thought. Leora chuckled. You're just figuring that out now. Varric turned to her, eyes burning with fury. Tell us how to stop him. Leora leaned forward, her gaze steady. Stop him. She shook her head. You can't stop him. You can only run. Varric gritted his teeth. I do not fear one man. Leora's smirk deepened. Then you're a fool. Before Varric could respond, an alarm blared through the chamber. A security officer rushed inside, panic on his face. My lords, we have an intruder. Varric's blood turned to ice. Where? The officer's voice cracked. Inside the palace. The council members leaped to their feet. Lady Shira hissed. Impossible. The palace is locked down. The officer's hands shook as he pointed to the security feeds. The screens flickered, showing blacked-out corridors, soldiers lying unconscious, doors forced open with bare hands. Then, on the main screen, a shadow appeared, the lone figure, dressed in black armor. Moving without fear, Darius Kane had arrived. Varric's breath caught in his throat. No, this can't be happening. Leora's voice was soft, almost amused. I told you. The guards inside the chamber raised their weapons, hands shaking. The doors were reinforced, the room built to withstand sieges. But suddenly, none of it felt enough. A deep boom echoed through the halls. The council flinched. Another boom. The lights flickered. Boom, boom, boom. Then silence. Varric swallowed hard. Hold your positions. The guards aimed at the door. Fingers trembled over triggers. Then, the doors exploded inward. Smoke and fire filled the room. Guards screamed, thrown back like ragdolls. The council staggered, shielding their faces. And through the flames, he walked in. Darius Kane, eyes like burning coals. Armor scratched, but unbroken. Hands clenched into fists that had shattered armies. The remaining guards opened fire. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. Darius moved. A blur. A shadow. Before anyone could react, he was in front of them. A fist struck. Bone shattered. A guard collapsed, his body crumpling like paper. A second guard swung a blade. Darius caught it barehanded. Metal groaned, then snapped like a twig. Another guard lunged. Darius grabbed him by the neck and hurled him across the chamber. His body slammed against the wall, motionless. Then it was over. Silence fell once more. Darius stood among the fallen, his breathing calm. The council was trapped, defenseless. He stepped forward, locking eyes with Varric. Varric's face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Do you wait?" He raised his hands. "We can negotiate." Darius tilted his head. "Negotiate." Varric nodded frantically. "Yes. You want peace. We can discuss terms." Darius smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "You didn't negotiate when you took my wife." Varric's lips trembled. I didn't know who she was." Darius' voice dropped to a whisper. "Now you do." Varric gasped as a hand closed around his throat. He struggled, feet kicking uselessly against the ground. Darius lifted him effortlessly, holding him in the air like he weighed nothing. Varric's vision darkened. His hands clawed at Darius' grip. Please." Darius didn't blink. "You think this is about revenge?" His voice was ice. "No, this is about justice." Then, with a sharp twist, "Kirai Kiki." Varric's body went limp. Darius let him drop to the ground. The remaining council members stared in horror. Leora, still sitting calmly, gave a slow clap. "Took you long enough." Darius turned to her, his expression softening for the first time. He reached out, gently brushing his fingers against her cheek where she had been injured. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." She smiled. "You were right on time." Lady Shira, still shaking, spoke. "What now?" Darius turned his gaze on her, then the rest of the council. You're going to tell the galaxy what happened here. Shira hesitated. And if we don't? Darius took a step forward. Her breath caught. You will. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Varric's lifeless body lay crumpled on the floor, his eyes still frozen in shock. His rule was over. His power was gone. The remaining council members did not move. Darius Kane stood in the center of the chamber, his dark armor stained with battle. His eyes burned as he looked at the leaders who had once ruled with fear. Now, they were the ones afraid. Lady Shira swallowed hard. You want us to tell the galaxy what happened here? Darius nodded. Yes. Shira's hands trembled. If we do that, there will be chaos. Darius took a step forward. Good. The room felt like it had lost its air. The council members, once the most powerful people in the galaxy, now felt small in front of one man. Admiral Vos finally found his voice. You don't understand. If the people see that Varric is dead, that a single human destroyed our fleets, our rule will collapse. Darius tilted his head, then let it collapse. Vos' face turned pale. You're talking about anarchy. The Empire will fall apart. Darius' expression did not change. Then it deserves to. Shira clenched her fists. Do you even know what you're doing? Darius stepped closer. Do you? His voice was low, dangerous. Your empire kidnapped innocent people. You attacked my wife. You thought no one could challenge you. He let the words hang in the air. Now you will see the consequences. Shira looked at Leora, as if hoping for mercy. Leora smirked. Oh, don't look at me. I told you, he's not here for revenge. He's here to end you. Darius turned to one of the guards still standing in the chamber, a young officer, barely in his 20s, holding a rifle that shook in his hands. What's your name? Darius asked. The soldier hesitated. K. Chiron, sir. Darius nodded. You're not one of them, are you? Chiron swallowed. I only followed orders. Darius stared at him for a long moment. Do you want to keep following orders? Chiron slowly shook his head. Good, Darius said. Then I have an order for you. Chiron straightened. Yes, sir? Darius pointed to the council members. Put them on the air. Right now. Chiron's eyes widened. You mean live transmission? Yes, Darius said. Every screen, every station, every planet. Chiron hesitated. Then he looked at the council, the people who had ruled over him with fear, and at Darius, the man who had walked through fire to save the one he loved. And Chiron made his choice. Yes, sir. He rushed to the control panel. His fingers flew over the keys. A loud beep filled the chamber, and suddenly, every screen in the Empire went black. Then, one by one, they lit up again, and every single person on every single world saw the same thing. The Galactic Council, broken, defeated, and standing before them, a single man, Darius Kane. His voice was clear, cold, unstoppable. People of the Empire. For years, you have lived under the rule of those who believe themselves untouchable. You were told you had no choice but to obey, that no one could stand against them, that no one could fight back. He turned his head, looking down at the council members. They were wrong. Millions of people across the galaxy held their breath. Admirals watching from their flagships, soldiers gripping their weapons, slaves in factories looking up from their work. Common citizens staring at the screens in disbelief. Darius continued. The Empire took what they wanted. They killed, they stole, they enslaved. They believed no one could stop them. But today, you see the truth. He grabbed Varric's dead body and threw it to the ground in front of the camera. Your leader is gone. Shockwaves spread across the Empire. Even the council members gasped. Darius didn't stop. Your rulers thought they were gods. They thought they could do anything, take anyone, destroy anyone. and never faced the consequences. He stepped closer to the camera. I am that consequence. Millions of people felt their hearts pound. Some, for the first time in their lives, felt hope. Some, for the first time in their lives, felt fear. On a distant world, a rebel leader grinned. It's happening. On a military base, a general whispered, "This changes everything." On a prison planet, a captured soldier clenched his fists. "We're not alone." And in the council chamber, Lady Shira whispered, "This is the end." Darius turned to the camera one last time. "The Empire is over. It will fall. And I will make sure of it. To those who seek justice, who want to fight for a better future, now is the time. Rise." Then, without another word, Darius turned off the transmission. And across the galaxy, the storm began. The galaxy erupted. The moment the transmission ended, everything changed. On distant planets, people who had once lived in fear now saw hope. The Empire had always seemed unstoppable, but now its leaders were exposed and defeated. Rebel forces, long hunted and crushed, rose up. Military commanders who had been forced to serve the council turned against their masters. The Empire was falling apart. And at the center of it all, Darius Kane. He stood in the council chamber, watching the panic spread. The once powerful rulers now looked like cornered animals. Lady Shira's voice shook. You don't understand. If the Empire falls, the galaxy will be in chaos." Darius tilted his head. "Maybe." He stepped closer. "But it will be free." Admiral Vols lunged for a hidden weapon. Before he could fire, a single gunshot echoed through the chamber. Vols' body collapsed. Lyra lowered her smoking pistol, still trying to fight back. Pathetic. The remaining council members did not move. Shira's hands curled into fists. "You think you've won. That destroying us will make you a hero." Darius met her gaze. "I didn't come to be a hero. I came to end this." She laughed bitterly. "And what now? You'll rule in our place. You'll wear the crown." Darius took a deep breath. Then, without a word, he turned away from the council and walked out. They stared, confused. Lyra smirked and followed. "You really thought he wanted power?" Shira froze. Then, "What does he want?" Lyra paused at the door and gave a wicked smile. "For people like you to never rule again." Then she locked the chamber doors behind her. The galaxy was burning. On military bases, mutinies erupted. Soldiers who had once fought for the Empire turned on their officers. On prison planets, gates opened, and slaves walked free. On capital worlds, riots filled the streets. The people had chosen. And the Empire, it was dying. Darius and Lyra walked through the burning streets of the capital. Explosions shook the sky as rebel forces clashed with the last remnants of the Empire's troops. Lyra looked up. "It's happening, isn't it?" Darius nodded. "Yes." She exhaled. "You're a legend now." He frowned. "I never wanted that." She smiled. "Doesn't matter what you wanted. You changed everything." A group of survivors ran past them. Former prisoners, rebels, soldiers who had switched sides. One man stopped and stared at Darius. "You're the one from the broadcast." Darius met his gaze. The man's hands shook, but not with fear, with hope. "What do we do now?" Darius sighed. "That's not my decision." The man frowned. "But you?" "I'm not a ruler," Darius said. "I came to break the Empire, not replace it." The man nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure no one like them ever rises again." Darius watched him go, leading others toward the battle. Lyra nudged him. "You're really walking away from all this." He gave a small smile. "We did what we came to do." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "So where to now?" Darius looked up at the sky. Far above, ships burned. The Empire's fleet was breaking apart. But beyond the wreckage, beyond the destruction, there was something else. A future. A future where no one lived in fear again. He turned to Lyra. Anywhere but here. She laughed. Fine by me. And together, they'd walked into history. The empire fell. The tyrants were gone. And the galaxy was forever changed. Not because of an army. Not because of a war. Because one man refused to bow. Because one name made the galaxy tremble. Darius Kane. And his legend would never be forgotten.